In the first year of a new decade, Kenyan youth are still fighting their way up to financial independence and achieving their dreams in a corrupt society. Despite a system that claims to prioritize inclusivity, these young Kenyans are yet to solve the riddle. I'm Yasmin Mohammed. Welcome to the Youth Cafe's Tea Talk. What's your feeling about corruption and the temperature in the country about how the youth are involved in this fight?
Okay, corruption first and foremost is a menace. I think it's something that's affected our lives. But the sad thing is that in the past I had hope for the youth that maybe a youthful leadership, a young, youthful leadership in the future might change the dynamics of things. But right now, what you see is that, like, there's a poll that was carried out. I think it was last year by some company which was carrying out like views of the youths towards corruption. So many of the youths, I think 60% of the youths actually say that there's nothing wrong with corruption as long as you don't get caught. So if that is the kind of feeling that we have towards corruption, because we normally admire these thieves who steal from us, we don't treat the same way the same way a good thief probably gets the same treatment. He doesn't get the same treatment. These people steal from you. They steal from you through crafted, well-crafted contracts and tenders. That happens in boardrooms. They should be given the same treatment as a good thief probably. So we admire these people. The more someone steals, the more actually he's idolized in our communities. So that is the sad reality of how we youths actually think about corruption right now.
Right.
The whole concept about corruption, something that has been there since time immemorial, and even in the holy books, corruption have been talked about. Now, the biggest problem is it has become systemic nowadays. That corruption became the modus operandi of how people operate. Now, it can be of two aspects. We can have what is called regulated corruption, and we can have unregulated corruption. Regulated can be a situation whereby it's legal. For example, lobbying, patronage. Then we have the unregulated, where bribery comes in, embezzlement. Now, it's said every year $1 trillion goes to bribe.
Wow.
Every year. And every year 25% of the gross domestic product for African countries goes into corruption. That's roughly another 1 billion that goes to bribery.
Wow.
Now, the problem now comes because corruption will affect the normal economic system that we have, the normal laws that are there, the laws in the labor market, the laws in the commodity market, the laws in the money market are all altered. Now, when one law is altered, the repercussion is it affects the entire economy. Remember, the economy is variables brought together from various sectors. If one principle in the labor market fails, it will have subsequent effect in the health sector, the education sector, security sector, and all the other embodied sectors.
Okay.
Now comes the youth and their role and how they can contribute to stop corruption. Now, one thing that the youth can do is, first is we need to have a system that gives people priority based on merit.
Okay.
A meritocratic system. Because if we remove merit from the system, the law is broken. A classical example is how we employ people. A job is advertised for a finance position. Then the qualification is a background of finance. Now, out of nepotism and those close relative kinsmen, you try to put your person there, quote unquote. So someone who never studied finance is fixed there.
Right.
So this is the implication. This person doesn't have finance background. So his productivity level will go down because he's not contributing anything prudent to the finance department.
Okay.
Then number two, the overall productivity of the company goes down because one person is limping.
Okay.
When the overall productivity goes down, the overall competitiveness of the company in the market goes down.
Okay.
Because the company cannot produce quality product. Why? Because one of the employers is unable to perform his or her duty.
Because it's not his place and he didn't study for that, for that position.
Because there was somebody told there to push him.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to discuss this more. Where the youth can come is first, we need to change the idea of education. Why we go to school? To get knowledge.
He said through that menace thing and the leadership involvement, do you think the leadership itself is contributing to this?
Yeah, sure. Because the role of the leadership is to formulate policies that help the people.
Right.
That's their basic principle. That's why they're elected, to just form policies.
Yeah.
And these policies are the ones that are going to help people. Now what people don't understand is the importance of these policies. Simple policy of employing people.
Okay.
Simple policy of resource allocation. Simple policy of getting people into a job market.
Yeah.
If those things become straight, then everything else will follow. For example, if we want to have, like the case of the employment, we strictly follow merit. If it is degree in finance or degree in law or degree in engineering that we need, whether it is your brother or your wife, that person should be qualified, then they should be competent. Now, what kills the other effect now spills over to education, because someone will say, what's the point of me studying? Why? Because there are people who went to the highest helm of knowledge, university, they got degrees, but they're jobless. There are those people who just finished Form 4 and they're driving big vehicles. So after all, the people who were in school were inspired to study hard so they can get employed. But the system is not there, and the people who are controlling the system are the political leaders.
Okay, so we have mentioned about how the leadership is not cooperating and how the people are not involved and how people who are not fit in their positions are taking up the positions of the people. So this is where you come in about how humanity is not included in all this siphoning of the funds and the embezzlement and the bribery. Recently, we have seen how Gikomba market has burnt down. And we have seen some heart-wrenching photos and videos of how people don't have anything left on them. I think this is where the government, well-wishers on social media were the ones looking out for the people instead of the related authorities. Do you think humanity has been lost in this? Because you are a human rights activist and involving in all this, people who are not fit for those positions are up there, while someone who has a master's degree of economics and finance is just in the village, just, in the depressed position, and people who just reached Form 4 level are the ones driving chase cars and the ones taking up companies. Do you think humanity has been lost against this fight in corruption?
Right. So I can take this from a human rights perspective, but then when we look at human rights, we look at the laws. So from everything we've discussed so far, we need to understand that Kenya actually has an amazing constitution. That's something that most people take for granted. In our constitution, you'll find that in processes of, budgeting and, policy formulations and all this, each one of us has a role to play. You see, if county government of Garissa is doing their budget formulations for next year, we're supposed to be called. Usually, in an ideal situation, we should be calling for public participation, right? Whoever is in charge, the finance, what are they called in the county? Yes, the CEC of finance has to have a committee. This committee has to trickle down to the wards and everything. These people have to actually sit with community members, even those ones who cannot speak Swahili or English. You have to speak to them, tell them how the money was spent last year, what we have plans for the money this year, what they think we should plan for, But then this does not happen most of the time. This is not really because, community members don't want to participate. It's because they have no idea that the Constitution of Kenya says community members should participate in this budget process. Other than that, in the policy formulation, we have to actually sit before a bill becomes a law. We have to sit and say, I like this, I do not like this, could this be changed, how does this affect me, But then you find that most of the time, I've attended meetings, a few meetings in Garissa for public participation. You will go to the meeting and find just professionals in the meeting, because these people don't take the time to go to the grassroots. And the people, if you count, if you look at the economic, if you look at the population of Kenya, right? How we are 45 million, but then the percentage of people in the rural areas is much higher than the educated few. But then all the time, the people who make decisions, the people who sign things are the people who actually went to school, and we don't look back. When you get to you know, advance and go to Nairobi and all that, you feel like you've gotten to the city and you don't think back to what is happening. Even with the counties actually now being devolved and everything, it's still the county townships that benefit from all this. So I think when you look at a human rights perspective, you just need to look at the laws in place and how community members can be involved.
Okay, now this is interesting. She mentioned about misinformation, and he said the lack of togetherness from the upper leadership to the grassroots, and how people are not involved. Now, as a long-term whistleblower and a youth activist, and I admire you for that, because most of the times you point out where and when these things are happening. Do you think enough civic education has not been done, or has been done by the leadership? Because you're someone who frequents these places and these people. Tell us how it is in the grassroots, how it is up there, and what is the gap in between, and what is not happening, and how are the youth not involved in all these processes? Because we are the same people who are educated, and again we are the same people missing out in all this, and our people back home, because we are the ones they're looking up to. And just give us an extension of how this is happening. It's
not just in the grassroots, but even in those, you know, in those towns and all that. Even among the educated folks, those people who have gone to universities, they still have that, mass, apathy and indifference towards knowing this kind of information, like the budgetary information and all that. These things are subject to public. They're supposed to be subjected to public participation. But those people who are supposed to, take the mantle and lead from the front line are those educated youths. But how, if those who have been educated have gone to university just to equip themselves with skills and come back with papers, but they don't have that, when they come back to, the areas, they came from, like they come back with the village mentality. They now start thinking like, the village folks. They appeal to tribal and, that kind of politics and all, tribal clan politics and all kind of things. So it boils down to the lack of civic education in our counties. And I think this is something that goes, it's among the larger population and also among the educated folks. So I'll give you an example. There's normally everything supposed to go through public participation, as she has mentioned. Right. Like I'll give you an example of the county when these policies and all these are made. There's a CIDP, there's a county integrated development plan, a 5-year plan. There's the ADP, the annual development plan. Then these things are passed, and before, when these things are being formulated and all that, it's supposed to go through public participation. When the budget and these things are supposed to go through public participation, but you will find that nobody is taking part in these kind of things. You'll see, a particular group of, youth that have been assembled, and then they'll be given some packs and some tokens, just to be, to show the camera that the public participation was conducted. So there's that, mass indifference towards knowing this kind of thing, and it all comes to reading the Constitution, knowing your rights, knowing the roles and responsibilities of these officers, knowing the roles and responsibilities of these elected leaders' positions, and then you can hold them accountable while you have that information, because they say information is power.
Do you think we are responsible for internalizing this, for letting this happen, for letting this go this way, because we are the educated few, as she said, and the sad thing is that the youth are the ones getting used in this process. They are the ones who should be making the change. Do you think we have done enough action? We are the ones getting used. How is this happening?
I think this is on two parts. The blame should not be on the side of the youth alone, because they are governments. The government should also educate its citizens on some of these, there should be civic awareness. There should be some civic education on these kind of things. I think the government does that, but right now the problem is the government is not doing that enough. Both, the local, the county or the national government. If you look at both levels of government, we all normally depend on these things from well-wishers and NGOs and the civil society organizations. Those are the people who actually do this kind of work. So there's like that gap on that part, and on the part of the youth, the educated folks are not taking the mantle. They're not taking the front line in trying to educate those who have not had the opportunity of going to school and reading the Constitution for themselves. So there's that mass indifference and apathy towards this whole thing. So it's an approach. It's our, you know, the way we're currently approaching it is not, you know, in line with what's supposed to be actually done for effective results.
Okay, these are the NGOs as you mentioned. Again, the foreign aid like World Bank, they're still coming. But do you think they are not following up with the credibility?
Now, these foreign organizations that help countries develop, they are called the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the IFC, International Finance Corporation, and the World Bank. Now what they give out is loan for reconstruction and rebuilding of an economy. Now it is the government that knows what it needs. For example, the government wants to have a water project in Garissa, for example. But the budgetary allocation that the government has for the Ministry of Water is not enough. So actually among the sources of revenue for the country includes borrowing. Now the government can borrow from the people in the country. They can do individual borrowing. They can come and borrow from Yasmin. They can borrow commercial banks. The banks that are there, that are trading in the country, they can borrow from the commercial bank. They can also borrow from the central bank by telling the central bank to print more money, which means they are going to devalue the currency, which is dangerous in the long run because devaluation might cause inflation in the end. Now the other one we have is they can borrow from international organizations. Now the World Bank will not have a problem even if they give you 10 times a loan because they know you're going to pay back. So the government gives, before they borrow the loan, there's the security agreement, there's the collateral they enter. But the problem with the African leadership is this person knows that when he's borrowing this loan, the maturity date of the loan can be 10, 20, 30 years. He or she may not be there. That's number one. Number two, the loan was not borrowed on personal property. It's not your logbook or your title deed that you give out. It's a country that borrowed the loan. So if those people come, they are going to take what was agreed. They're not going to go to the person. That's it. The third one, which is sad, is the beauty and the goodness of eating free money. These people, they get a test. Like today we want to have a water borehole in Garissa. The people of Garissa don't know that they're going to the water borehole. This water borehole is between the government and the World Bank. The money comes. You don't know if there's a water borehole. So lack of information or information asymmetry is something that is causing the collapse of the economy. The money comes, it goes into the people's pocket. If all the borrowed money could have been implemented, the economy could have grown. Because to grow an economy, we require three things. We require enough capital, both human and material. We require labor, enough labor, skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled. And we require technology. So Kenya has enough labor. It has enough resources. Enough capital is there. We can import technology. That's the only thing of a gap. We can import up-to-date technology and develop the economy. So unless we redefine the moral compass, unless we instill integrity, we are going to have more and more talks about corruption. We will talk, people will steal, and society will move on. That's the sad part. Yes, unless we need to walk the talk and have an actionable programs to follow.
After exhausting all that and involving the leadership and the finance experts and the people on the ground that are involved with the humanity issues, do you think we have had enough? And give me your closing remarks about what you feel and what should be done about all of this.
What we've discussed today, we've seen that actually everything is on the ground. It's just that we've not taken initiative, all of us have not taken initiative to actually implement this. So I think as a youth myself, I think I will, going forward, I'll try and make a change, you know, because if I do, like if I make a difference myself, maybe I'll influence one other person to actually, you know, follow my lead. Because we actually, Fahad mentioned earlier that most of us youth, we are social media warriors. What we say, a lot of things we say on social media, we don't actually say them when we are sitting having tea or coffee. Tapata, we are sitting having tea or coffee, I'm on my phone, you're on your phone. Why don't we share ideas? I feel like it's about time we actually told each other to do something that will impact someone else other than thinking about ourselves and gaining followers from social media. So that's my takeaway from here. Today I'll go and try and build someone positively to try and, you know, make a change in our society.